When we get up.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hometown Friends, where we will be exploring our most foundational friendships and the stories that define them. I'm your host, Chandler Hoffman, and on this episode, I have the privilege to talk to one of my best friends from my hometown, and he was the best man at my wedding. Maurice Howell will talk to us about his journey through life as a kid growing up playing hockey. He became an All American Lacrosse Player in high school, graduated from Berkeley, became a firefighter, and now is a retired captain. He's an amazing friend and dedicated husband and a father of 5 boys. I hope you enjoy my conversation with one of my favorite hometown friends. Welcome to the Hometown Friends podcast. My man, Maurice Howell.
Boo, 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 boo.
Nice. Love it. I've been so excited to have this conversation for so many reasons. First of all, I love you so much. You're one of my favorite people and such a friend to me.
Chan. And I you.
Thank you. It's mutual. One of the reasons I like you is that you express that kind of love and that we have done that over the years.
Yeah. It's not in my, it wasn't in my upbringing. There wasn't a bunch of I love yous, but I do realize that I shower it with my own kids and my wife and everybody now, which is, a little over the top at times, but I embrace.
We certainly didn't do that in high school.
Oh, no. And so maybe it's just a maturity thing. I don't know.
Well, I think it's also a depth of relationship thing that you, especially for men, and there's all that homophobia in general, but I think for men, well, I'll speak for myself, it's almost pushing through this homophobia thing to say we know that that's important, like that we know each other are important to each other.
Absolutely, 100%. The first person that comes to mind, though, that really broke down those boundaries are like an Andy Wells. Andy Wells was the most loving, hands-on, I love you, kisses, the whole thing. And and that was at an early age. That was at an adolescent young man that I remember being showered by Andy. And it just really broke down that barrier, though, too. I mean, way to kick it off just about another, beat-down homie friend that I absolutely adore. And watching our families grow in kind of unison, in some way.
Yeah.
But that's somebody to this day, doesn't part ways without giving me a big old kiss, or anybody else that's around me, right? So
he is. He's an affectionate dude. Yeah. Well, I think we all learn things from other friends, ways of being,
Absolutely. That's why I think you're so spot on with this whole thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's such a pleasure to spend some time with you today. I mean, there's not another person in the world that I think of like a brother there are a few, but you're the one that's at the top of the list that I think of like a brother. And I lost my brother. My brother died when I was taking my exams for becoming a psychologist. And I never went to his funeral. I actually feel pretty bad about it. And I was actually somewhat close. He was almost 20 years older than I. He was a jazz drummer and very shy, not very social, not like me. And he would laugh kind of funny. And he was around during my wedding, which you were my best man at. And he was like, part of that best man thing. But that, it says a lot, though. My brother stood up for me and you stood up for me. When I say stood up, I mean, right, you were there at my side. I don't even know how you felt about it, but you were my best man at my wedding. You made a speech. You got me there on time. You were the person I felt closest to. You were like a brother.
And as far as you and I go, like Chandler's always been this this level meter of integrity and morality. And, when I wanted to go astray, I would obviously you'd be there to consult me one way or the other. And I often went and just did my own thing. But I know that you were that constant meter for me of right and wrong and choosing
Wow.
wisely. And so, a quick story, or it's not that quick, but um, a very big impression on me was, asking you what you wanted to do for your bachelor party, right? And
Mm.
I think at this time, I don't think I was married when you got married. No, I had a kid. I
You had
had
a
a
kid.
second one on the way,
Yep. Yep.
but I don't think I was married before you.
Nope.
Um, but the responsibility of, bachelor parties was only based on like outside media influences or something, in
Sure.
fact, I don't think I've been to probably one or two other bachelor parties, but they always seem to follow that script of, nightclub, dinner, strip club,
Right.
debauchery type of thing. And you were like, I don't want any of that. And
Right.
it made such a big impression on me is like, okay, let's, get outside this box and what does, my friend truly want to do? And you are always a big outdoorsman, somebody that, and another, benefit of having so many different, all these eclectic friends, camping. Like I didn't camp when I grew up as a kid. I was too busy just playing ice hockey or something, traveling from hotel to motel. And so you were like, hey, let's do some type of camping trip. And, through the benefit of being in the fire department and knowing a real cowgirl, she exposed me to like a city slickers trip, which was just so on point. It still provided some laughter, and it was all set up for us. We shopped at Costco and got all the alcohol and food that we needed, and thought we were doing our camping thing. But it turned out to be truly that as a city slickers trip, and sizing us up to all the different horses. Like for Andy Wells, they brought out My Little Pony, which was just hilarious. And with Mike, they brought out this stallion Clydesdale horse that was huge and had a big laugh over that. And then,
That's great.
took all our beverages and food and packed it up on these pack mules. And then we went out on these dangerous switchbacks on horseback for a few days. And it was
Yes,
just
we did.
the most awesome trip ever. Like it was just such a good bonding experience for all of us. Like there was no separate groups or anything. We were all from Berkeley,
Yep.
for the most part,
Yep.
and had the best bachelor party I've ever been to. Right. And I don't
Wow.
think I'm going to
Love
go
it.
with it anymore, but
We're over the bachelor party era, I think.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for organizing that for me and listening to me, because I definitely didn't want the nightclub stripper thing. And it was an amazing camping trip. I'd never been on a horse camping trip before. And it's interesting that you say all these guys that I asked to come were from Berkeley, which is, it actually says a lot about why I'm doing this project, right? Why you and I are talking right now and why I'm launching a podcast on Hometown Friends. It says a lot about the people that have been always close to me have been these sort of ties to an earlier time frame. And it's interesting because I was not friends with Rob Aids when we were in high school or even middle school. When I knew of him, I became friends with Rob Aids after I had come back after college. I had lived in both DC, Maryland, New York, come back to college, about to start graduate school, found my way to Marc DeJonvre's place on Woolsey House, saw him. He invited me to come live there. I started living there. Rob was there a couple times, and I looked at him and I said, so Rob, how much time do you spend around here? Because I want to know who I'm going to be hanging out with. And he's like, quite a bit, Chandler. And I was like, okay. And we have an amazing friendship that has been extremely close since that time. But again, was not friends with him before that. But since that time and during the time when I lived at the Woolsey house, when I got introduced to Chrissy and, started to think about marriage and asked you to do that, he was certainly a close friend. And I ride bikes with him 2 days a week, pretty much in the last 15 years. So I see him every week. Yep.
That's amazing.
But let's go back because I want people to know a little bit of your story.
Born in 1968 in the middle of a Black Panther riot. There was a ceasefire, and my mom's from Berkeley, and my biological father from both Berkeley High kids. My mom's 18 years old,
Wow.
had me when she was 19. And so Berkeley was our just space, right? And
she grew up in Berkeley.
And she grew up on Peralta and Gilman. And
nice.
I think eventually, my first childhood memory is on Stanage and Gilman. So Northside kid, closer to the tracks. Who would have known 4th Street would have become 4th Street? We would have all bought some property down there early on.
No doubt.
But, from the local pick and pack to Casey's barbecue, it was all home down there. And then, all the local schools from Jefferson Elementary to King Junior High. There was Franklin in between. Mm-hmm. And then on to West Campus. It was a huge merge because that's when, the North Side and the South Side kids all came together. And it was a difficult time with that merge. I mean, just so many new faces, and I had my base friends from a guy I still comes by this house. We've gone out to dinner a couple of times. Josh Luff was a Northside kid, and he comes by and still just laugh and sing about our early childhood days, and me going to my first party, where there was boys and girls, and having my first dance. And I want to say it was with Amy Nellis. My friendships, though, expanded beyond school. I was fortunate enough to be a little local rink rat at Berkeley Iceland. A lot of ice hockey friendships. Mm-hmm. Some were Berkeley kids, some were outside and being driven in. Kids from St. Mary's, Bobby Pope, Harry Overstreet. Just, they were a little bit older, but just, big mentors to me. And Dave Tom, another big mentor in my early adolescence.
These are older kids that were part of your hockey experience.
Exactly, and which was a big part of my life.
Yes.
Playing ice hockey from age 5 is what my mom and I recently discussed. 5 years old, she had it down to, and all the way through college. And then even in my professional firefighting world, where that was my end to the new fire department friendships. And they developed an ice hockey team, and I bonded with a lot of those guys because of my ability. I won't pat myself on the back and say I was the best.
Oh, you
one.
can.
I was the best one, though.
Yeah, I'm here.
On the ice hockey team. So that it went for years, and just playing ice hockey for the local fire department, which was just so much fun as far as friends and family being able to partake in that. So
can you tell us how you got into ice hockey?
Well, what some people would call my stepdad, and he's not my stepdad, he's my dad, Rodman Lewis Howell, came in my life when I was 5 or 6 years old. So my mom was divorced from my biological father, Maurice, and took me ice skating to a public session. And I gravitated to it. I look at some young ice skaters to this day, and the ones that just kind of hit the ice and start running, that's exactly what I did. And there just happened to be a beginners program immediately after the public session, and we stuck around to watch them. And my dad asked me if I wanted to get out there and play with them. And they had a bunch of Berkeley Minor Hockey Club extra equipment, and they suited me in a helmet, gave me a stick and some gloves, and I just took off and never looked back. I mean, it was just, and you know what's really amazing about, it was such a special place of Berkeley. I can't praise it enough, but it was just so diverse from the get go. You know, I had so many friends from that initial time: Matt Burrows, Bobby Pope, like I said, Harry Overstreet, eventually LaRue, Peter Bankhead. I mean, so many, and such a diverse, and people that look like me and people that didn't look like me, people that looked like me but didn't talk like me. It was just diversity at its finest. You know, we had people from up on the hill, people down below, and people outside the Berkeley city limits, right? All playing on this team, you know, with one goal, you know, and it was just a blast, you know. My parents devoted a lot of time, and anybody that knows anything about West Coast ice hockey is really odd hours, you know, 5 in the morning type of practices and games late at night type of thing. So they were really devoted to me, and it kept me out of trouble too, you know, being able to have a second home, and that was the ice rink, you know. And eventually I ended up working at as a young kid, and
At Iceland?
at Berkeley Iceland,
Yeah.
right down the street from your house. Even in the later years of playing ice hockey and lacrosse, you know, I felt like I went all over the state, but I never got to see anything because you're just part of a team, right? It was hotel, stadium, back to the hotel, back to the airport, back home. So you never really got to see much, but I've been there, right?
It does make sense that you would have very close friends from that kind of experience, the ice hockey experience. And the interesting thing that I think a lot of other people don't have is a very diverse friendship group. And I mean this like you're talking about ethnically, culturally diverse, but also diverse in socio and economic areas too. And I'm curious of how you experienced all of that, or when you look back on it, what does that mean to you?
It shaped and molded me into who I believe I am to this day, you know, and longing for that connection to still be there. I mean, I could rave about this for hours, just the whole hockey experience, and friends that I reach out to this and play golf with, like a Bobby Pope. We're still in contact with each other, you know. And obviously, we didn't even go to the same high schools, from the same city, but didn't go to the same high school. Weren't at the same college, but we've always stayed, you know, one click away from getting a phone number if it's changed or something, and getting back in touch, and invites to, you know, some social events or something. But I think of one really big impactful friendship from ice hockey was a guy named Dave Tom, another older guy. I want to say, I don't know how old Dave Tom is. I'm sure he looks younger than me to this day. If you follow,
he's in pretty good shape.
But the guy's just a phenomenal athlete, and I always looked up to him. But for him to cut me enough time, I remember being in college and wanting to pursue the career path at the time of like physical therapy, sports medicine, and Dave knew a lot of people, but the most important thing is he sat me down, and I think he was already a college graduate at the time, and I was still studying at UC, and he gave me a template, and he worked with me, sat down and worked with me. I'll never forget it. Sat down with me at a local coffee shop and went over how to do a resume, and spelled it all out for me, pretty much copied. This is, at the inception of computers. I think Apple
Yeah.
just came out with a computer at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
able to teach me. And I had my typing skills from Mrs. Ogilvy at King Junior High already, so that was no problem.
Nice.
But Dave took the time to show how you put bullets and use all these tools on the computer and to produce this resume that I'm so proud of. I know exactly where it is right now, but it launched me into this ability to be marketable in physical therapy as a PT assistant or a PT aide. And you know me, Chan, like I was always injured anyway,
Mm-hmm.
post surgery times eight. So I was always exposed to physical therapy. Why not just start
Right.
working in it, right? And so that's
Love it.
Dave Tom is, single-handedly responsible for showing me how to market myself and the knowledge, skills, and abilities, right?
Right.
To put down on my resume and sell myself,
Right.
on paper as well as, interview strategies. So
Right.
that is just, one thing from the hundreds, thousands that I've gotten from friends, right? And I think later in life I've learned, to quit taking so much and try to um, give back. I was probably busy raising 5 kids to, to really make an impact, but that's
I,
just one
I,
example of a Berkeley friendship.
what a great story. And I think we often don't see the things we do for other people and then we notice the things that other
Yeah,
people have
it
done
probably
for
means
us.
nothing for a Dave Tom, right? And
I
who knows
wonder.
if he even remembers it, but
I
it was
wonder.
just that, it was that level up, and nothing against my parents or anything, but they probably didn't work with resumes at the time, like it was job applications or something. So
Right.
just to have that level up from friends and the mere exposure of
Yeah.
what's out there, I think from all our Berkeley friends, up in the hills, down below, side to side. I mean, I think there was more on my side of it. There was more taking than giving, other than some comedic relief or something that I might have provided, right? Like
Wow.
I felt it kind of really launched me into a comfort that I still enjoy to this day, and it's all
The
attributed to
sense,
Berkeley.
yeah, the sense of support that we have felt from our friends. I feel the same way. It's really why I wanted to have this podcast and talk to people about their hometown friends, because that's the kind of story that I think we never forget. And I love the fact that it didn't happen when you were a kid. It happened when you were in college, but it was a hometown friend who was either willing to be real with you enough, and you were willing to take that feedback and sit down with them and actually be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, and I need this. Right. And then I want to get to where I want to get to. And he spent actual time and exposed you to something that, by the way, Berkeley High and truthfully, I don't even know if other high schools tell you how to do this shit. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
college, they don't have a resume class. They should. Right. Every high school should have a resume class, don't you think? But somehow they just leave that shit up to us.
And my parents weren't college kids at all, so it was up to me. But then it was up to my friends, and Berkeley lacrosse. I mean, let's take it right there. That was a sport that I didn't partake in until I got to high school. It was
Didn't
somewhat
exist.
similar to ice hockey. Yeah, it didn't exist. Brother John Sazaki, John Kratz at the time, Mr. Kratz, our photography teacher. He brought this sport, made it legitimate varsity sport at Berkeley High, and I don't think I was on the inaugural team. I think we came in on the second year of it, but that sport alone, those friendships alone, launched me into exposure to UC Berkeley. I mean, there were some Southern California programs or universities that I was exposed to, but it all came from lacrosse. The mere exposure and the eyes of the UC Berkeley lacrosse coaches. and there was another school, Whittier, and San Diego State was big at the time that were interested in me and LaRue, and that they would pay for these trips down to Whittier College, and down to SDSU, and we would play in these summer camps. And I mean, everything short of signing on the dotted line, I was headed to Whittier College, Nixon's alma mater, and instead of UC, but I had to fulfill some requirements to get in the back door of Cal, which I successfully did. And next thing you know, I'm playing lacrosse at UC Berkeley, all because of Berkeley connections. Like, I still praise John Sasaki to this day for bringing that sport, because it just launched me into something that I would have never even entertained at that time.
Yeah, I think we all found something that we could. It was a new sport for all of us. I had come from baseball and didn't like riding pine, so went on to a different other sport. And I didn't join until I probably got recruited by you guys, because I just wanted to hang out, and it was in junior year. And Sasaki was still there because he was a year older than us. And that was another team situation where we had lots of friends. We had a pretty diverse group, actually, for a lacrosse team, I think. And you were, you were our goalie and a star, truly. And, we had some really talented people.
All American.
But you were an All American.
All American.
Tell us.
Out of Berkeley High. The All American lacrosse player out of Berkeley High School is this guy.
Nice.
And I'll tell you a funny story about that I cannot seem to get over, and it involves LaRue. Maybe we should save that so I can burden him with his cheating. Let's call it. Again, lacrosse was expensive East Coast sport, and sticks then were out of reach. Well, Berkeley High had a plethora of donated and used old equipment. Well, there happened to be one midfield stick, short stick, and there happened to be one goalie stick. And I can't remember who our coach was. It might have been Phil Tagami, but it might have been this guy named Steve. I can't remember Steve.
I think it was Steve.
Pointed to where these two sticks that were available to play with. Mind you, LaRue and I lock eyes, look at the two sticks that are available, and sprint for the little stick, for the midfielder stick. He trips me. I fall. He gets the midfield stick. I get burdened with this goalie stick, this big, and if you're not familiar with it, you are, but it's the big, awkward-looking butterfly net.
Totally.
And I was thrown into play goalie now, right? Like, I've always played an offensive, aggressive, right wing, left wing, hockey player, and now I'm thrown in the net with this awkward stick, and I just gravitated to it. I was used to pain from getting hit in hockey, so lacrosse ball was not that big of a deal.
Right.
LaRue and I, and tell me if you were there, in our first lacrosse game, we went to play Skyline High in Oakland, and there was another player, there was another African-American player that dominated the game, Horatio, for Skyline. Our first official lacrosse game, we lose. They score 32 goals on me. We lose 32-2. Wow. I have 32 goals scored on me. But I scored 2 goals. Guess who scored those 2 goals? The guy with the midfielder stick that stole it from me, LaRue Mayo. So I'm like, and I swore at that moment when the 32 goals were scored on me, I was like, I'll never let this happen again. And I seemed to, get the hang of it with some practice, obviously. But
yeah, you did. Becoming a All-American. We're talking about LaRue, and maybe we should save all this, but actually one of the stories that you've told me that I didn't necessarily know, takes us back a little farther with you and LaRue, maybe when you first met in the hockey experience. And it's about sort of, it seemingly, and you tell me if I'm right, it was almost like the first time you realized that racism existed and that you were the point of it,
the
or
recipient,
the recipient. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sure, as you know, in the lacrosse and ice hockey world, as we got older, not too many African Americans were playing ice hockey, and it was still a white dominated sport. Thus, a lot of exposure to music that was not typical. We would often get teased on the back of AC Transit for these butterfly nets and hockey sticks on the bus on Friday night going to a late night practice, and probably stopping by your house immediately after to shower and go out and party on a Friday night. But first we had to tend to our sports. But we bonded it with that because LaRue is a big musician. Even back then, he had a full drum set, but we listened to a lot of rock and roll music too. So we were into Def Leppard, Quiet Riot, the Billy Idols, and all this strange, that weren't the cookie cutter African American music that we were still brought up in, with Earth, Wind and Fires and the Al Greens and everything. But we had the best of both worlds, and as far as we were concerned, so we heavily bonded over that we were able to just move from space to space. But
you were
around.
heavily influenced by white people specifically, and rocking, and people who listened to heavy metal.
Yeah, exactly. And learn to embrace it. I mean, the Led Zeppelins and all that other stuff we were exposed to at a young age, and we embraced and pretty fond of, even still to this day. So that was one of the perks, looking back on it. I just remember trying to find our way. It brings it back to the point that you were making, though, is we're so naive in this lovely Berkeley world that we live in. And I remember I came off the ice in the middle of a game, and somebody called me a jigaboo on the ice, and I had no idea what the jigaboo was. And I came to the bench, I sat down next to LaRue. I was like, hey, that one guy just called me a jigaboo. I was like, what the heck is a jigaboo? And LaRue, without missing a beat, gets angry and was like, oh, we're going to go get that guy. That's and I put two to two together that it was offensive and it was a racial term. But I remember getting back on the ice and immediately being able to fight on ice, where you could get away with it. And we punished the guy and his teammates by association that, you would use this racial epithet towards me. And it really started to define that we weren't the same as all these other players on the ice or the lacrosse field either. It really transitioned to that, but we were used to it by that. Right.
I was going to ask that must have just been the first time, because I know in lacrosse when we went to Novato, we had a full-on bench clearing brawl. So, and it was about something that somebody said.
Dropping the N-bombs from the crowd onto the field. Luckily, they're very aggressive and violent sports, so you could take out a lot of the frustrations right then and there and deal with it. I often, a lot of friends, especially in the fire department, always referred to me as some short guy, but I never felt any inferior when I wore a jersey and we all were part of the same team. I mean, because you, Andy Wells, John Shaw, John Bell, any of those guys, Ryan Taylor would have stuck up for me as a brother. And, I don't think they ever saw any big difference between us, Yet
it must have been, it had to have been special kind of relationship with other Black men, specifically LaRue, when you feel like you have the same experience and you're moving through the world and you're being judged by the color of your skin and you're having aggressions and microaggressions, of course, but to have that kind of understanding with a friend is likely different. I'm
Exactly.
wondering.
And it was a deep bond. Yeah. We dealt with it a little different than what we would deal with it now, obviously, but it was definitely a united front, and it wasn't just from LaRue; it was from all of our teammates, though. Too, there was a deep Berkeley bond that we had, all my
Mm-hmm.
teammates. So,
Mm-hmm. That is a special kind of friendship, is when we meet people in sports teams. And as you say, we all put on the same uniform. So the idea, actually, that's why a uniform exists, I think, is because you all put on the same uniform, you identify with the same thing, and thus the difference is not between the people and the team. The difference is you against the other team, right? So you're able to identify within this. We have the same uniform on, so thus we are one, and we are against this
and
other.
my problems are your problems, right?
Yeah,
If it
yeah,
gets to that, and my
yeah,
successes are your successes, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah.
I love uniforms. I always loved uniforms because I was fat. I remember not wanting to feel different or marginalized or whatever small.
Yeah.
But when I put on that uniform, I was just like everybody else. My clothes weren't any different. We were all, and I wanted to make that uniform tight, and it fit pretty tight, if you know what I'm saying. But
I wonder if there's
loved
something
it.
deep in the psyche about that too. Like I've really gravitated away from it, but the
Mm-hmm.
transition was easy from team throughout my life, whether it be ice hockey, lacrosse, right, rolled right into fire department too, right, and I'm sure you could look back in my early professional career, I would always be rocking some, fire department this and fire department that, and it truly becomes like part of your identity, which is so fearful. And I was able to somewhat break out of that too, like, okay, I'm not Maurice the fireman, I'm not Reece the fireman or Mo the fireman anymore. I'm back to being Reece. There was a real
Right.
identity, and I remember trying to wearing hockey jerseys way before they were even popular, right? Because there was a sense of
Mm-hmm.
identity. The Berkeley
Yep.
Bruins, but
Yep.
and then the UC Berkeley. I mean, if I could just if you talk to Dave Che, see if you can.
Mm-hmm.
I know that dude's got one of my Cal lacrosse T-shirts or something that I get
I'm sure he
back.
does.
um, it's just there was such an identity through it of, well, who truly are you? And that was one of the benefits of having a psychologist best friend too. Of really, like, who are you? Are you the fire department? Are you Cal lacrosse? Are you BMHC? So I think it's right back to friends and empowering you of being you, Reece. You don't have to wear that uniform all the time. Here's a funny story of some days of old that you participated in. It's not the prettiest of stories, but
Uh
you
oh.
know, you talk about friendships and being through thick and thin. Well, there was a little
Yep.
devious side of us back in the day where we
Yes.
were still in high school, and
Yes.
we would acquire things from friends and family. But here's one thing that I've always held on to, and I've never really understood why I've held on to this. But I don't know if this will bring back any memories to you.
Wow.
But this is a vintage 1985-ish Cal
Shit.
Berkeley baseball uniform. Does this bring any
Oh
memories back
shit.
to you of how
Uh,
we got this
wow.
random jersey
Wow.
from UC Berkeley
So we
locker
were
room?
still in high school, and then we were in the Cal Berkeley locker room at some point, somehow, some
And
way.
in a laundry basket, we ended up with a couple jerseys,
Wow.
and I still hold on to it. Like, what the
It's a
heck?
nice one. It's a pretty nice one. The funny thing is that when you got into Cal, you were the PT for the team. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, so truth be known is my little claim to fame is I was actually on a football scholarship. So if you look at my transcripts and everything else, I got a football scholarship at UC Berkeley.
Oh my
Well, the
God.
only way I got that football
I know
scholarship
this.
on paper was through my the guy who hired me, Bob Orr, was the head athletic trainer, and he was allowed one scholarship for athletic training and people that were studying sports medicine. And he hadn't given it out in like 2 years or something. And
Wow.
I go up to the football stadium and I tell him that my work history in physical therapy, because of Dave Tom, I was able to get a little work history under my belt. I had some skill to offer or whatever, so I thought, in the physical therapy, athletic training world. And unfortunately, at the time, UC was getting ready to play University of Miami at home that weekend, and I was told to get out of here. When I went to ask for a job, I was told to get out of here, and I was sent away with my tail between my legs. And he said, on his parting words were, "If you're still interested next week, come back up and talk to me." And I remember it was
Nice.
said in front of all these athletes that I still considered myself an athlete at the time, playing lacrosse and ice hockey, but they were club sports. They weren't
Yeah.
Division One
These guys were
men's
college
football,
athletes.
right? Yeah, like
These are scholarship athletes.
and I remember,
I guess you would.
it was great to be humbled at that moment, and I sucked it up, and I came back the following week, and the guy out of nowhere, and UC Berkeley cost $764 a semester, which I look back on and I laugh, right?
Wow.
But my parents couldn't afford it. It wasn't in my budget. I couldn't work another job to pay for it, and by the blessings of the universe, this guy gave me a scholarship,
Damn.
paid for books and tuition to
Amazing.
go there, which was, yeah, such a blessing. I mean, I've lived a very lucky life so far, of even given those opportunities. And
Yeah.
again, it's right back from all the Berkeley connections I had.
Well, you're a master connector. You connect so well. And so it didn't surprise me when you went off and became a firefighter. And how did you want to tell us a little bit about how that happened? And then the friendships that come from that are pretty deep too. But then there's a contrast between those friendships and the friendships of the Berkeley hometown people.
Yeah. Well, it did, finishing up school, meeting my wife, we jumped in with both feet, and next thing you know, we have a kid coming in 9 months, right? So it kind of put me on the fast track to getting a career started. And one of my UC Berkeley lacrosse coaches knew some firemen. This is what they called them back then, when the term wasn't so PC.
Gotcha.
Gave me a couple contacts. Another guy that played lacrosse was Jake Ascovito, that was trying to play or trying to be a firefighter at the time, and we bonded from our lacrosse worlds. And then I had another side of my family from my biological father. Two of them were firefighters at the time, and yes, the fire department then and still now, to some degree, depending on where you're at, is good old boys network. But they put me, some extended cousins put me on the fast track of learning how to apply and get the gig, which often takes a lot of years to acquire. I never forget, it was like 12 months to the day that I got my first job offer from Contra Costa Fire, then Oakland Fire. Had a fruitful career, yeah, same thing as a team. Everybody had their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
There wasn't the community I wanted to work in. Ultimately, I wanted to be in Berkeley still,
Mm-hmm.
which is, really funny to think back on it. Like I would have given, anything to be part of Berkeley Fire,
Yeah.
to be part of a community that helped raise me and give back, and,
Right.
I nurtured it over the years, but my heart was still pulling for me to come back to like Berkeley, Oakland. There was a availability to transfer, but you would be leaving a lot behind to
Right.
start over
Seniority.
again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I stuck it out, but my heart, always, fell back into, Berkeley, but, great career. Lots of, family bonding. You live with somebody for 24, 48 hours, which I
Yeah.
easily turned into 72, 96 hours to do a
With
tour,
overtime.
yeah, with overtime, making,
Right.
one of the old sayings is you'll never get rich, but you'll eat like a king. And it held
Right.
true, paying
Mm-hmm.
into a expensive pension and working lots of overtime. Next, 5 kids later, a lot of mouths to
Wow.
feed besides mine. And that's what my inspiration though is having my firstborn son really, shed some light on the responsibilities of you just not feeding yourself. It was hard. The career is great, very rewarding, but it can easily suck you down a road of identity, and this is who I am every single day as Mr. Firefighter, solving other
Mm-hmm.
people's problems, on
Mm-hmm.
an emergency level.
Mm-hmm.
Really built up a callous, towards life and problems too,
Right.
to a fault.
Right.
You're almost right. Like unless
Right.
my kid's fingers chopped off, like it's not that big of a deal, right? Because
Right.
I just saw somebody's arm actually get lopped off, and you're going to be okay. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
so you have become really heartless with that career too. But it
Mm.
was fun.
Well,
The only thing I miss
you-
are the poker games and the food.
well,
Yeah.
it's interesting from my perspective, like seeing you from the outside, right? Seeing my friend grow in a couple different ways. I so admire you, or I did admire you, for even just having a baby, right? The fact that you had Taylor and you guys were taking care of him. You weren't married, but you were making it, and you were about to get into the firefighting. And it was an inspiration to me, Reece, because first of all, that's adult shit, man. I didn't think I was ready for that. And to see you have Taylor and to see you and Celeste being parents was a total inspiration to me. It gave me permission to be an adult. Because
Yeah.
if my man Reece could do it, I can do it somehow, something like that.
Yeah, I think it drove me. I mean,
I
having my
bet.
first kid drove me to like, okay, I'm 100% in supporting all of this. So it
Right.
drove me, and I often wish I could find that same drive into something else, But it that for that moment, I just remember it was a great time of life
Yeah.
of being so focused on so many different things, being a parent, father, a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and a firefighter, right?
Yep.
It's brought me to this place. So
Well, one story that I have about Taylor being born is I was running a marathon. I ran the San Francisco Marathon. And I remember thinking about Taylor when I ran that marathon. And I remember bringing over the
yes,
medallion that they
I
gave me.
do remember that. Yeah,
And I gave it to Taylor when he was like 9 months, 10 months old.
yeah, and that's funny you say that, Chan. And not to sound corny or whatever, but with this platform of friendships too is like it's all about showing up, right? And then the mere fact of you inviting me out there to support you, right? And then taking advantage of that opportunity because marathons aren't in my wheelhouse. and here this man has chosen to do it. And I don't think was San Francisco your first or your second?
Yeah, no, it was my first, and I think I think I did two really, San Francisco and New York, both
But
amazing.
then finding you underneath the medical tent with the wrapped in the emergency blankets and all, it's just super inspirational, man.
Shit was hard.
Just feeling so proud, almost like I ran it, like being
Mhm.
a piece of that, a piece of that
Yeah.
success through
Yeah.
what do you call it? Through assimilation, or
Yeah.
it's just
Osmosis.
a great day. Yeah.
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 Yeah. The fact that I forgot that you actually showed up for me to meet me at the end to like celebrate this accomplishment with me. Yeah, that last couple miles are rough for anybody who's run a marathon for sure. I'm no, stellar athlete, but that took everything I had. And the fact that the kind of friend that would show up. And so we kept this friendship going, but we always kept track of each other. I think that is something about this hometown friend thing, that you keep track of people that are important to you. And you and I did that. We embodied that.
Being involved in such a grueling between parenthood, because one came, two came, three came, four came, five, and it was a lot of work with the career and outside the career of just being a parent. It
Yep.
just drug me to so many different places, and I think going through hard times too, of realizing that you had somebody to fall back on, such as yourself, because you've always been a great sounding board. You got me through a lot of life's trials and tribulations too. So just very thankful, and just being able to hear or be heard, let's say too, because that's one thing I did remind my father-in-law recently. I was like, one common trait with the two psychologists that I know on a personal level is that they're good listeners. That yes, they have tools to give you and advice and options, but they're always good listeners, and that's something that you had from early on, dude. And I'm sure existed prior to me even knowing you in 10th grade, is the
Wow.
ability to listen, and let somebody just, tell you their story, and then you can break it down from there. So I think that's something that I praise our friendship for.
Wow.
From an analytical, compassionate side, and put whatever label you want on it.
Well, it reminds me when I think I reminded you before, like I gave you this questionnaire to prepare for this podcast. And it says, essentially, what is the definition of a friend? It's essentially about having history and being able to drop in and not have to explain yourself all the time, to be understood, to be seen. But then at the end, it's like just a friend is someone who listens to you.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, I hate to beat it up with the term of showing up, but chance somehow you always still, cut out a sliver of time, and that sliver is turned into the biggest pie or biggest cake that, I hold valuable to this moment, right? Like all those times just add up to something that runneth over,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that
Thank
is
you.
what something I treasure and I hold dear. In your friendship, LaRue's friendship, um, separated by the Pacific Ocean, the guy that we love and is seen, at highs and lows.
The love gets deep, bigger and bigger, like more. We're just maybe like what we were saying before. It's like we start appreciating the long-term familiarity and the feeling of comfort and the trust and the affection for each other. And then it's just like this just a brotherhood. There's such a beautiful sense of connection. I just think it's unique. I think everybody knows it when they see it or feel it. And I guess for me, it's just been called this hometown friend thing, but it could obviously be there with other people that you feel that with, that you have some history with. But because we've had this history so long, it happens. It happens pretty intensely. So, but truthfully, throughout Berkeley High, you have lots of hometown friends, hockey. And then, this whole idea of us keeping in touch with each other. I know all 5 of your kids very well. In fact, I have such affection for each one of them. They're different personalities, and each one knows me. Now, some of them know me a little bit better than the others because maybe just age, exposure, depending on the time. But when I sit with your kids, it's like, it is a family situation for us. And my kids. My kids know how important you are in my life. You are revered in our family as, Reece is coming over. Basically everything is always welcome. There's no place Reece isn't welcome. No time period, no dinner party, no nothing. There's something to that.
Yeah. This podcast is just, it brings to light of what's important, right? And we've seen it time and time again with classmates. One of Celeste's, childhood classmates that I remember being at our house, several years ago and sharing a glass of wine with this guy, passed away 2 days ago. I mean,
Wow.
So it's just really scary to think about, like, what from this point forward. So one way is to document it and get it all out of, like, what was important then, what's important now, and how we've all kind of grown together. And some friends that I've just grown apart from and then still admire from a distance. And the truth be known too is we only have so much bandwidth too. And I don't know how to say no to things, even at this age, right? Like, there's no boundaries. It just keeps, and forcing my way into people's lives, even like Mark Conway, right? That we weren't the tightest friends growing up as kids or anything, but somebody that I look at and admire, and I've just always enjoyed his smile and laughter and easiness to talk to. And part of it being is because he's a Berkeley guy, right? And
yes,
he's somebody that we shared that real relaxed, Mark Conway attitude and fun. I literally can't wait until next time I get to hang out with that guy or even see him in passing.
Yeah, I think that is a thing, right? Is that it's not just the people that you had relationships in and with in high school. It's that you have familiarity with these people, and then you can actually start a friendship that's deeper from the get. I think that's unique. I've done that with my friend Dominic. We rode the bus together in 4th grade. I remember him being funny. We've uncovered some other times when we had sort of an intense relationship with this other guy doing all bad stuff, being knuckleheads. And then fast forward, our kids are going to the same middle school after 30 years or 25 years. And then we see each other at a party. I tell him I'm a cyclist. He says, "Oh, that's cool. I'd like to come out." And I'm like, we meet this time and this time. And he shows up, and we see each other 2 days a week on this cycling thing, this hour road bike ride. And then our kids go to Berkeley High. My daughter joins the mountain biking team. His son joins the mountain biking team. We start being there at the same time. We start coaching the mountain biking team together. So now we're riding together, coaching together. We're seeing our kids raised up together. Our families get together. Through the pandemic, I don't know what I would have done without Dominic Tracy. I mean, I went out 3-4 days a week outside, 6 feet apart with masks on, riding up the hill so we could get our exercise. And we were talking. And thank God. I mean, I really don't know what I would have done. I would not have survived the pandemic being as social as I am without that one person in my life. That's what this is about. These are the hometown friends that you aren't you don't actually have to be friends with them to have the familiarity to drop into a deeper sense of connection right away, which is what you're talking about with Mark.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of, several that I look for and I embrace because it's that familiarity that brings so much like joy to everyday life. I mean, I absolutely embrace it wholeheartedly. So
You mentioned your friendship with Ryan Taylor, and it's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about.
Well, Ryan Taylor, man, like what a gift. What a gift that guy was. The story. We met in high school. I think we were fortunate enough to play with him for 1 year when he was a freshman, and maybe we were seniors.
Right.
The second All American out of Berkeley High, should I say?
Nice.
He was fortunate enough to attend University of Pennsylvania after he graduated from Berkeley High. But the connection that we always had was Ryan was home for the summer. And like all you guys would come home for the summer, and we had our pickup lacrosse games at Kleberger Stadium or Kleberger Field in Berkeley. And Ryan was Division I, All American, All Ivy League after his second year there. And
Wow.
we were, still. I think I was still at UC Berkeley when Ryan was there because I was just, I was on the extended plan. But his ability to come out of that Ivy League environment, and we all knew him as Ryan from Berkeley, right? That we didn't treat him any different, and a lot of jaw jacking and everything, and we would show our dominance, but then he would just clearly took it to another level and shove it down our throat, and lots of laughter, lots of good times. He graduates. I'm still holding on in UC, trying to finish up school, and he's dragging me out to play golf. It was his post collegiate game that he was obsessed with, and it wasn't clear to me how dominant he was in athletics until we got on the golf course, and we were playing golf together, and I think I even had a couple years in front of him playing golf, and Ryan just picked it up, and he was a natural. And then next thing you know, we're playing golf every other day, and he's just calling me and picking me up and taking me out to Alameda, and we built this bond. Anytime you spend 4.5, 5 hours with somebody on the course, you get to know them even deeper. And the short golf story I have is at one point, Ryan is 1 under after 9 holes.
Wow.
And, he can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And Ryan had this ability to so hyper focus that I just remember the feeling of him being ahead of me in this round by a big margin. And it was almost like I wasn't even there in his eyes because he was so focused on the task at hand of achieving what a lot of golfers never see is scoring par or scoring under par.
Right.
And I might as well have just carried his bag at that point for the rest of the round where he shot par. He shot even.
Wow.
72 at Chacarita North Course. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Wow.
And seeing him in that achievement, similar to completing a marathon, 26-2, of the enjoyment that I got out of even seeing and witnessing that achievement, And I think then again, it defines what a friendship is, that happiness for another person.
So true.
I didn't experience shooting even, nor have I. but just to be along for the ride and see that achievement gotten by Ryan. I mean, our friendship was too brief, though. I mean, just over 4 or 5 years, just too brief of a time period, but very close.
Yeah.
Lots of laughter, and it pains me to have seen any pain that he was going through, because all I saw was enjoyment.
You did not see the pain and the suffering that he was going through because his outward appearance was not reflecting that. So you didn't know that. A lot of other people didn't know that. I myself had a conversation with him at a bar. It was a couple weeks before he passed, or he took his own life. He told me that I was asking what he was going to do, and he told me he wanted to be a river raft guide, and that he was going to go and get a finance job. And he talked to me about his dad a little bit, and about how his dad was sort of wanting him to do this, and this was the right thing to do, and not wasting his education, and, becoming a professional. And I didn't see any of it. After Ryan killed himself, I knew his friends. I had heard through the grapevine that they were gathering, and I wanted to mourn with people. I wanted to connect with people. And so I wasn't really great friends with Ian. And I was actually a little afraid of Ian. I was afraid that I would be rejected because my experience of Ian was sort of too cool, but I didn't know Ian very well. But I called him and I said, I'm so sorry about Ryan, and I don't want to interlope. I don't want to, be a burden, but I would love to come pay my respects to you guys. And the experience, I mean, the what he said to me that day always stuck with me, is that he said, Chan, you wouldn't be a burden. We want to have you here. You have to come. We need you. And I went right up there to Matt Nash's house. And it was such an important experience. Even though I didn't know Ryan very well, I had lost track of him. I played with him 1 year. I had this conversation with him at a bar, and then it was over. And I got to mourn with his best friends. And it made such a difference to me. And I remember thinking, this is what happens when death happens. People get together and they open themselves up, and all the pretenses come down, and people connect on a very, very personal level, and it feels really good.
In their real selves, right? Like the intimidating Ian Inaba, shows his real soft side and inclusive. We can't do this without you, which are words that, you and I, knowing Ian, would have never thought were able to come out of his mouth, right? But with that deep bond from it. One of life's regrets of not ever questioning how somebody so handsome, so bright, so gifted was going through pain. And, just the mere mention of you recounting a story of hearing something, right? Ryan could have probably said the same thing to me and I wasn't listening, right? And that's the gift that you've been given of actually hearing somebody, right? And for that moment, and, not probably equipped, with your PhD yet, right? Tool of trickery.
No.
Just kidding. But, without your tool bag that you have right now, I for that mere fact that, there is the identifying gift of a friend I call Chandler Hoffman was able to hear, where I can't recall a single time, of some postgraduate blues, sort of some postgraduate blues, of getting a real job in the Wall Street. I don't think I've ever heard of a river raft tour guidesman come from Ryan. Never.
I remember the feeling that he had, that it didn't seem like he wanted to do what he was expected to do. And, if we look back on it, I'm sure there was at least that, if not a lot more other pain and suffering, and maybe other people can explain what happened to Ryan and what was going on behind the scenes that none of us knew. But it was a tragic loss for our community because it was such a young person, and he did seemingly have everything going for him, and he left a lot of very sad Berkeley people.
And gave a lot of gifts, naming my firstborn son, taking on Ryan Taylor's last name of Taylor Howell in honor of that guy. So, if anything,
big influence.
Yeah, anything good comes out of it. I don't even know if that's right to say, but
well, we have to make meaning out of these things, right? They're so shocking. And the fact that you and I actually have a couple stories and your son is named after it. I have this amazing, inspiring story about when tragedy happens, you reach out to people and you expect that they will bring you in, even if you weren't part of their crew.
Yeah.
That's inspiring to me. Like, that's informed me when other people have died. I've been willing to say from that Ryan experience, I know this happens. I can expect something to happen. I can expect affiliation. I can expect connection. This is great. This is so fun and so meaningful to be able to chat with you about our lives together, to share our friendship, to talk about your friendships and other friendships and the meaning of these hometown friends. You're like the perfect person that I thought about when I thought to start recording this. And I want to thank you for taking the time and the survey and being willing to record this with me. What a gift.
Just like the San Francisco Marathon. I'm
nice.
Right behind you. Okay. So.
Well, Reece, you have been the wind at my back so many times in my life. I have to say, all I want to do is make you guys proud of me. And I've tried to do that over and over and over. And it's been a funny motivation to go out into the world and have you guys sort of cheering for me. And I love the concept of when you have a friend is when someone's happy for you, when you're succeeding, that's a friend. And that's, I hope, the experience that we've given each other. I certainly want to reflect that to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chan. Much appreciated. I guess I should say too, but thank you. You're the inspiring one that actually had a vision and followed through with it and putting it, and who knows where I was going to go, but it doesn't surprise me. And that's part of the reason I admire you and your whole family too, is the ability to follow through and your insight and able to listen and ask questions and provide the input. So much appreciated, Chan. Nothing but love for you, dude.
We fall down, but we get up.